Hello, and thanks for joining the Caterpillar Safety Services monthly webinar titled Overcome Culture Clash, Sustaining Safety Excellence Through Mergers and Acquisitions. I'm Abby Rhodes, Marketing Manager for Caterpillar Safety Services, and I will facilitate today's event. First, a couple of announcements. The phone lines are muted. Please submit your questions for our presenter through the Q&A or chat areas of WebEx, and we will use the final 10 to 15 minutes for your questions. Also, this event is being recorded. A link to the recording, including the slide presentation and audio, will be posted at safety.cat.com later today. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the site and an invitation to complete a brief survey, and we hope that you do so. Now I'm honored to introduce today's presenter, Chip Steensma. Chip is a senior consultant with Caterpillar Safety Services. He has more than 20 years of experience leading safety, quality, and environmental improvement workshops, conducting system assessments, and implementing best management practices. Chip has an extensive manufacturing background and has worked in several high-level engineering and operations management capacities. He works for Caterpillar facilities, dealers, and external customers to develop safety accountability systems. And I'd also like to welcome Randy McGuire, Caterpillar's Emission Solutions Product Manager. Randy and his team engaged the Caterpillar Zero Incident Performance process at an acquired facility now named Caterpillar Santa Fe in 2011. Randy joins us today to comment on some of his experiences managing safety culture improvement after an acquisition. So with that, Chip, let's get started.
Okay, great. Thank you, Abby. And good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. I hope everyone is doing well. As Abby mentioned, we're going to be reviewing today the challenges, risks, and the due diligence, if you will, the process of merging safety cultures and safety management systems when a company is acquired or merged. So let's head right into this. Our agenda for today, for the hour or so we have together, we want to take a closer look at these risks to safety management and to our incident rates, of course, during mergers and acquisitions. We want to take a closer look at the ways to assess the level of safety culture and safety management within a business before we acquire them. So we've got several tools and methods of doing that. We want to understand the best practices required for successful integration of these cultures. So we'll share with you what we do at Caterpillar Safety Services and also leverage the intelligence of many people that I've interviewed and have worked with and the experiences I've had in my career. And then we're also going to understand processes and activities to sustain for the long term. So just a quick 101 on why companies merge, of course. Many companies look to acquire suppliers and integrate them into their supply chain to leverage existing logistical systems and intellectual property and other types of assets that the company may have. Some companies merge, of course, to increase their product or service offering and customer reach as part of a larger strategy. Sometimes they want to leverage locations. A particular facility or business is in a key location, and they can use them logistically or otherwise. As I mentioned, there might be technology or intellectual property involved that we may want to acquire that brings the business into the enterprise, increasing market share, reducing competition, and many companies, particularly large companies, want to diversify their equity into other companies. That's why we see companies that traditionally have one core competency by organizations that have nothing to do with their core competency. So with these various reasons, you could be bringing businesses into your organization that have a wide degree of variability, particularly in how they manage safety. Some of the risks that occur with these acquisitions and mergers, in some businesses, as soon as you acquire them, we want to flood them in with new processes, with the parent company's products. And, of course, that creates a lot of change. With new products comes new processes come new hazards. And those hazards need to have controls, and there's a lot of noise in the business there that could create new risks and hazards. Employees are distracted. As we know, some folks, particularly local safety management of the company that's being acquired, may have a lot of additional duties and other things that they need to do to prepare for the acquisition, to make sure it goes smoothly, and so they're distracted, which leads into the next piece. There's vague roles and responsibilities of who does what. For example, if we want to move a new machining center into a business and it's a smaller company, we might miss the piece of reviewing that equipment to ensure all of the safety hazards are identified and controlled. And those controls are put into an asset maintenance system, for example, and inspection forms are deployed or not. So there's a number of things that need to happen here. And if you're acquiring a smaller organization, there could be a great deal of risk that a lot of these things fall through the cracks. Poor communication is a significant risk, particularly if you're a larger company and you have some non-negotiable policies and things you want to administer into this acquired business to start setting the tone and tenor for the new culture and how we want to manage safety. I've been around organizations that were acquired where there were corporate policies that were supposed to be adhered by, and they just did not get communicated out to the folks doing the work. And then, of course, this is not the most paramount reason, but when you look at an organization like Caterpillar or other organizations, when you buy these smaller companies, of course, you're buying their liability as well. You're buying their culture. You're buying their management systems. You're buying their the skills that the people bring. So if we don't manage very diligently, particularly in the area of safety, what this business is doing, they could expose our business to a great deal of liability and damage to brand equity and things of that nature. It's very critical that we manage safety during mergers and acquisitions. There are a number of failure points. I'm sure many of you in the audience could point to some as well. These were kind of the three buckets of failure points that we put together here. First, acquiring organizations many times just look at the lagging indicators of a business. What was their lost time incident rate? What was their recordable incident frequency? How many dollars have they had due to, or dollars of property damage due to incidents and things like that? And they may be satisfied with those lagging indicators and not do a deeper dive into how the business actually runs. So we don't want to do that. And as it's stated there, there's a relatively weak correlation between current lost time incident rates and future performance. We see many organizations that do very well in their incident rate frequency and then unfortunately have an egregious incident, fatality, something of that nature. Management taking a hands-off approach, management of the acquiring company, the parent company taking a hands-off approach and letting attorneys and consultants and contractors deal with the merger is not a good idea. We don't want that. It doesn't allow the parent company to promote visible demonstration of the importance of safety. As you see there, there's a lot of false assumptions in leaderships. There's lots of gaps in communication that don't get filled. We don't want to do that. And then waiting too long to implement. As many of us know, when we move into a new culture as a leader of any sort, we have about 3 to 6 months to instill our culture there and the way that we do business. And once we get outside that time frame, the old habits have manifested, new bad habits have formed, and we just missed the opportunity to institute our new culture right away. So kind of logical assumption there. We don't want to wait too long. We want to get right on it right away at the ground level. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about assessments, a little more of the technical piece of this. Again, with just the overall process. I understand in interviewing some of the people for this webinar that many of these companies that get acquired might be mom and pop shops, particularly if you're trying to integrate the supply chain. They may be smaller. There may not be a lot of refined safety management activities in place, but still, certainly before we acquire, we want to understand what the state of safety management and safety culture is. So we want this these assessments certainly to happen by qualified employees. It'd be great if they were conducted by the parent company, the acquiring company. So we've got three general types of assessments here. First thing we want to do, and I guess these don't have to be in any particular order, but you do want to look at the management system itself, and I'll talk more about that. We want to look out at the work site and see what's going on physically. How have we manifested these controls into the business? And then we also want to understand the human behaviors, the culture that's in the business, the level of accountability and involvement and engagement.
Hey, Chip.
Yes.
Yeah, this Randy McGuire. This might be a good point to throw in a couple of points. I think one reason why Abby and you, I think, thought that I might be able to add a little bit on this this webinar is I've had the experience of both starting a new facility and having a culture, being able to basically create a safety culture with new employees versus the acquisition route. And as Abby mentioned at the beginning, my involvement with what is now known as Caterpillar Santa Fe began with an acquisition of a company called Clean Air Systems in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And as you described earlier on, the reasons for acquisition that matched us, as you described just a moment ago, some of the critical failure points. I would have to be honest and say, to varying degrees, we pretty much made all of those mistakes when we, relative to safety culture, when we acquired this company. My predecessor was of the mind of more hands-off and letting it be what it was before, and simply be a supply source for our emission solutions products. And what we discovered was really many of these issues that you've already brought up, and the fact that we needed help and we were waiting too long to implement that culture. We had problems there from a safety culture standpoint, and with a great deal of appreciation, CAT Safety Services did step in, and I know we're going to talk through this process now, and this is the journey that we've been on, and we're nowhere near complete with it, but I'm a big proponent and would be happy to add more as we go forward as well. But I just wanted to give a little bit of background in there.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Yeah, you're spot on. It's very difficult to go back and fix and retrofit everything after the company's been acquired, and it's been in the business for a year or two. And as you know, I've worked very closely with Santa Fe as well, and we've got a lot of good success stories there to talk about. So as we move ahead, we'll look to leverage that story. With the different assessment types, though, let's see here. We've got a little animation there for you. But when we try to assess the safety level of safety management, level of safety culture within the business, we can look at it in three fronts. First, what are the management systems in the business? So I'll further define that in a minute, but what are the processes in the business that proactively identify hazards and their controls? So processes like procurement, other purchasing activities, job safety analysis, job briefings, things of that nature. And how do we train folks? And how do we check and make sure we're doing what we need to do? So those are management systems. And, of course, we've got the worksite conditions as another filter to look at. So this is where the controls are manifested out there on the shop floor, out in the battlefield, things like machine guarding and personal protective equipment, ambient environmental conditions, visual controls, means of egress, things of that nature. And then lastly, but not least, is the human behaviors. And these are the choices that individuals are making out there when no one is looking. This is our culture. So really asking the questions, why do our people in the company do or do not make particular choices? So that's very key. So we want to a level commensurate with the risk, we want to do this type of assessment before we do the acquisition. Some of these acquisitions you may say, Chip, we don't even need to do this. We know where we're at. Other acquisitions, like a Santa Fe acquisition or some of these larger operations, we probably want to really be very diligent in how we assess so we understand what type of capital funding we'll need, perhaps, during the acquisition to help with safety management and other types of resources. So real quickly, when we look at the management system, and many safety professionals have heard of OHSAS. They've also heard of other management systems. ANSI Z10, I believe, is another one. And I don't like to get into those titles of those management systems. I just really like to look at the spirit of what we're trying to get after with the management systems. And when we look at how safety is managed, we want to understand what our planning processes are, operating, checking, and review processes. So you can see a plan, do, check, act there. If we were to go into a business and we were deciding whether or not to acquire them and assessing their level of safety management, we should look at it on this front. So like safety processes, planning processes within safety management, we would want to ask what are the procurement and purchasing processes that we currently have in this business? Do we do any analysis, risk ranking, if you will, so that we can understand what the dominant hazards are in the business? Do we have safety meetings and some sort of job briefings in the business where we get together each day and we talk about safety, we share best practices? Here's an important one. How does the company identify legal and regulatory requirements for the business? Now, with Caterpillar and with all of our resources, we have a team within Global Environmental Health and Safety that pre-acquisition, we go in, we understand what those things are. But many businesses take a by guess and by golly approach as to what legal and regulatory requirements are imposed on the business. So we need to understand that. And then how does the business measure safety? What are their safety goals and objectives and targets? And answering that will tell you a lot about the culture. I'll move along through here expeditiously. I don't want to bore you too much with some of these details, but then we look at the planning processes, they feed into how do we operate or how do we manage safety, I guess, in the trenches. So what standard work procedures exist out there in the business right now? How are we training people and verifying competency of tasks? What regulatory programs are we supposed to have here? Have we done any industrial hygiene studies? Do we have any confined space? What types of energized work envelopes do we have? Things like this. Asset management is a huge one. How does this organization manage their assets, particularly in the area of safety? Do we have preventive maintenance programs? Do we have visibility to the number of assets that we have? And that sort of thing. Emergency response is another key piece of this part. What emergency response plans are in the business? And we may find as we're going to acquire this business that they may not have any of this. And of course, that would be a function of the work that needs to be done. Checking processes, what types of inspections are we currently doing in the business, whether they're safety walkthroughs, housekeeping, daily inspections by the operators, for example. What type of incident investigation, near-miss processes currently exist in the business, if any? How are we auditing, doing compliance auditing? It's not a terribly sexy phrase. Nobody likes compliance auditing, but it needs to be done. We need to protect and mitigate our risks there, particularly from a legal and liability standpoint. Other types of auditing, and how do we manage our safety records in the business? And then lastly, what types of review processes are in the business? We have this voice of safety management speaking to us in the business. Who is reviewing that data? Is it the right data, and are we acting on it? So again, very specific questions. Many companies may look back at you and say, we don't have any of this. It just depends. Many organizations I work with, small to medium size, don't have a lot of these things in place. So there's a model there in how that works. If we were going and doing assessment, pre-acquisition, we've got how's the company doing in safety planning processes, the implementation processes, do they have checking processes, and what do they review on a regular basis? Here's a quick chart. I'm sure many of you in the audience would have maybe different ways of assessment, but this is a way to quantify and present data to the team doing the acquiring, saying, hey, this is where we're at with this business in safety management. And based on this ranking and color scheming, we really need to invest heavily in these areas as we journey through the acquisition. So that's just on a management system standpoint, but very critical. Of course, we also just don't want to take a by guess and by golly position and assume everything's fine out there at the construction site or on the manufacturing floor or wherever it is we're at. So we need to go out and do an assessment of are these controls in place. So all safety professionals and almost anyone that's worked for any significant amount of time has seen some type of a safety job observation form. I've thrown one up here for you, a couple of them. One I did a couple years ago of a construction site where we just go through and we would look for those physical controls that I mentioned earlier, visual controls, fire suppressant equipment, and other types of things. There's a whole bunch of stuff we have on here. We'd also look at equipment and machinery and so forth, and then we could somehow quantify our results to be coupled with the management system results to say, hey, here's the holes they have in the way they manage safety, and we are definitely seeing it out on the shop floor. So we've got real issues here. So just wanted to expose you to that. And then most critically, and it's what we're about here at Safety Services, is really understanding the culture. Those other two components are critical, and they need to feed into the bigger story. But certainly we understand the culture, and that is, again, understanding the level of accountability, involvement, and positive perception by the employees. If employees don't positively perceive safety and see it as being cumbersome and in the way of doing the other things they're measured by, then that's going to greatly impact our safety performance. So at Caterpillar Safety Services, we have a tool that we use. You may devise one of your own. You can come up with a number of different ways of doing this. But we want to indeed assess the culture. So we may, let me give you a couple backdrops to what good safety culture looks like. This work here, these 6 criteria for safety excellence, was developed by Dr. Dan Peterson and a large team of safety professionals and other professionals, psychologists and so forth, over a period of 12 to 15 years that ended here around year 2000, but came up with these theories, these tried and true theories of what makes a good safety culture. So top management, of course, needs to be visibly committed to safety. We've talked about that, with visibly being the operative word. Middle management has to be actively involved in safety, either by participating in inspections and walkthroughs or incident investigations and so forth. Supervision is performance-focused, and they're measured on things such as their ability to follow up on safety suggestions, how well they're training their employees, and other sorts of things, how well they're managing their assets. Hourly employees are actively participating in safety. Safety is flexible, or the system is flexible to accommodate the site culture, so not one site size fits all, and you'll have different organizations that are required, so we need to have some flexibility. And, of course, the system has to be positively perceived. So this is the backdrop for assessing culture. When we look at the level of accountability in an organization, we want to understand how well accountabilities have been defined, how well we've trained our employees to be successful with that accountability. Are we measuring not only quantity but the quality of these activities? which is key. So again, we may do 5 inspections a week, but are we doing them in a high-quality way? And then do we have good recognition out there by the frontline supervisors and managers to the hourly employees on a job well done? So when we look at cultural assessment questions, some questions that may be asked are things such as, do you feel comfortable reporting hazards and are they corrected in a timely manner? That could tell us a great deal about culture. Are unscheduled inspections of equipment and work practices conducted? Do employees participate in safe work practices? Does incident investigation focus on a fault or facts? So we can ask a series of questions of this nature, get those answers, couple them with the other 2 types of assessments, and we can really start to get a very clear picture as to the level of safety management and safety culture in the business. So here's an example of the Caterpillar Safety Perception Survey, where we have a number of these questions listed on the left. This is not all of them. And we have employee responses, and we have supervisor responses to these questions, and we have manager responses to these questions. And we can measure independently how each group scored, and we could also measure the gap between the 2 levels. So there's 2 key indicators here when we look at assessing the safety culture. What is the perception of the individual or the individual group? And then what is the gap in perception between different groups within the company? Because, for example, managers could think that we do great at incident analysis and we truly get to the root cause, where the hourly employees believe that incident analysis is nothing more than a blame game. So that could be a huge opportunity to fix. Okay, and you can see some more results here, and these can be broken down into various categories, and we can do different levels of data mining and really dial into specific areas of opportunity. So I talked a great deal about assessing. This is kind of our first cut in the business, and where's the organization at? So now that we have this information, we need to develop some sort of an integration plan. And I wanted to put this slide up in front of everybody. We use this in our workshops. Very informative, powerful slide developed by Mr. Cotter here from the Harvard Business School. But as we go to merge these cultures, if there's a sense of complacency, we're gonna fail. We will have a problem. If we don't have a guiding coalition, in other words, if the leadership from the acquiring company and the leadership from the acquired company aren't on the same sheet of music in what we need to work on and the governing philosophies on how to work on that, we're going to struggle. We'll fail. If particularly the acquiring company underestimates the power vision and undercommunicates the vision, we will fail. I think this is for obvious reasons. You can imagine an organization that just gets acquired where the acquiring company's management comes in right away, is very engaging, communicates well, delivers the right message, versus an organization that just acquired a company and takes the hands-off approach. That could really fail in our overall mission. Permitting obstacles to block the vision, things such as we can't do this because of this. We don't want that to get in the way. Failing to create short-term wins is another organizational challenge. So as we put this integration plan in and we've got some meaningful action items to do, we want to do them in an expeditious way, a visible way, and involve employees. And, of course, declaring victory too soon. Relative to safety, there's never a victory. It's just a continuous journey where hazards are continuously changing and controls. So we want to be mindful of these 7 concepts. So once all these assessment results are in, and we're doing this acquisition, for lack of better phrasing, I said let's create a safety transitional team, but some group is going to manage this transition of safety. So I've got some bullet points in here. The membership and authority of this team needs to be a function of company size and hazards. So if you're acquiring a company of 8 people and there's an owner and 7 hourly workers and so forth, you may not need a team of 15 people to address this. Inversely, you don't want to have one safety manager from the acquiring company work on the diligence of purchasing a company of 150 people and $40 million in sales. I mean, and companies much larger than that. So we've got to scale this properly, which has been a failure point in the past. We want to have representatives from both companies meet frequently throughout the integration. We want them to take a look at these assessment findings and develop a plan. We want to leverage best practices, prioritize improvements, establish roles and responsibilities, and develop and support the safety integration plan through an action item matrix. Components of safety integration: we need to have good communication and training plans. One thing that was brought out, too, in this study is we need to make sure that we're developing leaders. We understand where the leaders are at and what their development needs are in terms of in terms of their understanding of what it takes to create a safety culture. We want to establish or improve the existing safety processes. So based on the assessment results, they may not have good standard work. They may not have good near-miss processes, good inspections, and so we want to make sure that there's a roadmap for getting those established and in the business. So here's just an example of a communication plan that would be conducted by this safety integration team, where they would communicate to all employees of the acquired business. Hey, here's what we found in our assessment when we were acquiring the business, and deliver that message respectfully. Here's what we found. Also, they would communicate, here's what we're all about. So in terms of Caterpillar, this would be an opportunity for Caterpillar to communicate to this acquired business. This is our safety culture at Caterpillar. This is what's important. This is what we won't negotiate on. These are the paramount governing philosophies in safety management in Caterpillar, so it gives an opportunity to share that with the team. Roles and responsibilities, who's going to be doing what through the integration, and if you have questions, here's who you see, that sort of thing. Also this safety integration team, it's always a good idea when they're up in front of people to recognize things that we've done right here at this acquired company and what we want to leverage. So in this example, they said they're going to be doing this type of communication within 2 weeks of the acquisition, and then they're going to be doing this communication every 2 weeks throughout the acquisition process for some frequency. We really want to mitigate the complaint by the employees of the acquired company to say, we don't know what's going on with the acquiring company, and we don't know what they're about. We want to get rid of those statements in the business. Also, we want to develop a training plan. The safety transition team should understand what training do we need to do that's beyond communication, but are there other things? So if there are new risks, new hazards, new products, new policies, procedures that are provided to the business, the acquired business, then we're going to have training to deal with that. So any training regarding new job safety hazard analysis, any standard work procedures, policies, and so forth. One thing that gets missed many times by the acquired company is we want to integrate these new expectations into new employee training processes. Many times during acquisition, we're real good at communicating right away with all the existing employees, but we don't have a mechanism to address those employees that are coming into the business post-acquisition. We need to make sure that we're training in a timely fashion and that we've verified that people are competent and capable to do these tasks. Training should always be active and engaging when we're doing this training, not passive. We want to include everyone, and training always actively involves the supervisors. So communicating and training are key components that this safety transitional team needs to understand. Also, leadership development is real key. For many smaller organizations that are acquired or companies that maybe are privately owned and don't have exposure to a lot of these contemporary management practices and leadership philosophies and just all these best practices in leadership, we want to get them trained up on this, particularly in the context of safety. So here's some areas that we could develop leaders in, things like problem solving and all of these specific topics within problem solving, how to do proper root cause analysis. We really want our folks to understand the value of positive recognition and how we set clear expectations and effective communication skills. So this is training that we want to do. Again, this company is now representing the mothership, if you will, in terms of Caterpillar, but the acquiring company, I think it's fair to say, is going to be larger than the acquired company in many cases. So there should be these skills and this training provided to that acquired company. Training and coaching is another one, and then reviewing the 6 criteria for safety excellence and other cultural models is key in developing leaders. So we're communicating, we're training, we're developing our leaders. This is all part of the transition. Just real quickly here, when we talk about recognition, this is really where magic happens in the business. This is where culture really manifests itself and comes out, and it's based on the level of positive recognition that we're doing in the business. So as we acquire this business, there's going to be some impacts to the culture. There may be some negative perception, positive perception, we don't know. But we want our supervisors and leaders in that business to understand the value of positive recognition and that it should be done meeting these 5 characteristics. If we're doing sincere recognition in a timely way and it's relevant, then our employees are really going to feel a greater sense of contribution, that they're making a difference, and this will help not only with the acquisition, but taking this organization to the highest levels. Recognition is very, very key, and of course it's predicated on good accountabilities. So we want this to happen throughout the acquisition and beyond. So keys to sustaining and improving, of course, is ongoing and positive recognition, as I mentioned. Some example, and we want recognition of safety activities. I'm not talking a great deal in this webinar about leading versus lagging indicators, but it is a passionate topic, and we want folks to be recognized, and we want to recognize enterprise-wide those leading indicators, those leading processes that will deliver good safety results. So we want to recognize things like people providing training on a timely basis and being effective, making sure we're doing our preventive maintenance activities in a quality and timely way, how well employees are managing housekeeping and organization in their area, all employees. Engaging and participating in safety meetings is another thing to recognize. Timely resolution and closure to safety improvement ideas. So let's say, for example, you're the acquiring company and your company has a process for continuous improvement where the employees put in suggestions and the supervisor is responsible for following up on that. If those aren't followed up on in a timely way, that could be very detrimental to your culture. So we do want to recognize those that do it well so we can promote the right culture. Level of root cause analysis is another thing to recognize. How well folks are doing with job safety analysis is another thing to recognize. So these are leading activities that we want to recognize in the business throughout the acquisition and beyond. So one way of addressing these opportunities is to create a rapid improvement workshop. And we've done this at CAT Santa Fe, and we've done this in other organizations within our model. But of course, you do this assessment, you create some governing entity to look at the opportunities and deploy a strategy. And one method of improving or implementing something like, let's say, a near-miss process is to conduct this rapid improvement workshop. Many industries, automotive and otherwise, call them Kaizen events. Some industries call them continuous improvement events. But again, it's a team that's going to work on this focused opportunity. It's going to contain a variety of folks and stakeholders in the business. They will meet for a designated period of time, usually for several days, and they will try to honor the criteria for good safety culture and make sure we've got good accountability in whatever process we're developing. So these are usually one-week events that go for 6 or 12 months. They are terminable. And we did a couple of these in Santa Fe. We did a near-miss process, and we also did an inspections process. And those are manifested and starting to bear fruit for us. And there's always opportunity to continually improve on these types of processes. But this is a model of how that was done. Another thing I wanted to share with you when we first publicized this webinar, we wanted to expose you a little bit to the Caterpillar production system. When Caterpillar acquires an organization early on in the acquisition process, we try to instill, that's probably not the right word, integrate, try to create exposure to the Caterpillar production system, which is using these guiding principles will also help improve the safety culture in the business. So if we have a rapid improvement workshop on something like inspections, equipment inspections, we can look at some of these principles in here and see how they can be leveraged in doing our work, such as driving standard work, stop and fix. How are we developing people in this inspection process? Is there waste in the process, in the inspection process, where we can make it more efficient? Things that, are we listening to all the stakeholders within the process, inspection process, and making sure their concerns are heard and considered? Inspection process, are we making it visual, where we can manage the process visually and reduce interpretation errors? So these are some other concepts we can use when we're improving a particular process related to safety. Then the safety transitional team, again, we've got communication, we've got training, identification of key processes, the deployment of a rapid improvement workshop. So this transition team is going to have some action item matrix that they will use. It's just we affectionately call it an AIM, but it's just an action plan. It says, okay, what do we have to do here as we move through this integration? We want to be detailed on these action items, commensurate with the risk. Sometimes these action items are not valued and they're not put on the list, or they're overlooked, and it creates huge problems for us. So the safety transition team should be very diligent in identifying specific items and what they're going to do. There was here's one here, number 6. When I was talking with folks, some companies may take an individual that's currently in the company and relocate them into the facility to help institute the safety culture, or to kind of be a conduit or liaison from the parent company to the acquired company as they move through the acquisition. You'll notice here in the champion column that I've got various levels that go to a very high level. So when we look at the 6 criteria of safety excellence, and is top management visibly committed, and are they really involved in this acquisition? One way to hook them into the acquisition is to give them specific assignments. So we've got a number of assignments here: scheduling the meetings, training, updating management documentation, improving emergency response plan, what have you. And here, in this example, they had a rapid improvement workshop team work on that. So every time the safety transitional team gets together, this should come up on the screen right away. And people update on this, and it's a dynamic document, that the team will use during the transition. So now the transition has taken place, and we're finishing wrapping up here. But we want to sustain and improve the safety culture. So this transitional team now is going to look to develop some local safety steering committee, some governing body over safety within this acquired business. Again, if it's a mom and pop shop of 8 or 10 people, this might just be a person with some input of some others. If it's CAT Santa Fe, where there's a number of employees, several dozen, if not more, we may want to create a more involved safety and steering committee. But this is going to be a local committee that's going to stay, that's going to endure and going to stay in the facility as a management entity for the foreseeable future. We don't want to terminate this team. They're supported by top local management. They're going to take on the responsibility that the transitional team did, and they're going to direct the safety culture and management activities. So they're going to continue doing these level of assessments. You can see they're scaled back much more now, and you'll want to scale these back as we integrate the business in, and we have a higher degree of confidence that things are performing as they are. We'll scale those back. And then we have to continue to utilize positive recognition through good accountabilities. This is what's going to take our culture from good to great and break through. And we'll get into the hearts and minds of individuals and have good safety performance. So some additional things here is that we want to ensure we've got visible commitment demonstrated by top management of both companies going into the organization. So I know that Randy goes into CAT Santa Fe frequently. He's very involved with their business. So we want to make sure we're doing that. We want to continue this continuous improvement journey. We want to have more rapid improvement workshops where we can just continue to work on safety management, because we know it's going to continue to change and present more opportunities. We always want to continue with our leadership development. So all those topics I talked about earlier, we want to continue to expose our leaders to those topics, and we want to make sure as soon as we get new supervisors or managers in, we want to get them trained on what good leadership is, particularly in the context of safety. And then lastly, we want to develop a management review process for the business. In this management review, and I know that Randy uses this, of course, with Santa Fe, and this is just a healthy mechanism where we touch base on some routine frequency, monthly, quarterly. However, I would recommend monthly, where there's talk between the acquired company and the parent company. We're reviewing safety goals, our objectives and targets. We're looking at the various results of the assessments. We're making decisions on new or changed policies, legal and regulatory requirements, and so forth. We're ensuring proper communication and training plans are executed. And this is more than just a team to just pick projects. This is a team that's really governing and steering the ship for safety culture within the business of moving forward post-acquisition. So in summary, with our presentation here, risks go up significantly, or certainly can. They have the potential to during acquisitions. We need to understand the current state of affairs with safety management and safety culture, and understand the gaps before we acquire. And we want to use that data to leverage improvement strategies and funding and resources and all of that stuff, and help develop our plan. We want to develop short and long-term safety committees. So we're going to have a transitional team and a safety committee, a local safety committee, and then we want to do ongoing assessments, inspections, continue with the safety committee, and continue with our rapid improvement workshop methodology, and right off into the sunset with great safety performance. So I think with that, that's the conclusion. I went about 5 minutes over. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'd welcome any questions to Randy and I. Hopefully we've touched on a number of topics here to noodle on, kind of a Midwest term, but to kind of think about and reflect in your experiences with acquisitions, and hopefully there's been some stuff you can use here to benchmark.
Okay, Chip, thanks. We do have a few questions that came through during the presentation. The first is, can one of the presenters speak to how many acquisition projects they've assisted with, especially with a focus on safety culture assessments?
Okay, I can. I've been involved with 6 specifically, and those were in metal fabrication in the Midwest area, and in particular to safety culture. Much of what was done, or the safety assessment, much of what was done was the job site assessment. We looked at the lagging indicators. We didn't do any management system review. We didn't have great understanding of the culture. And through some of that, that's where some of these lessons learned came from. And real quickly, I have some credits here I want to give, certainly to Randy McGuire, but also Mike Brodock and Zach Knoop. They've been involved with 35 different acquisitions. And the most profound feedback they gave me is that the acquiring company needs to get in there right away and develop leadership. Everything they said was focused around that, developing leadership in the areas of recognition and so forth. And I also want to give credit to Dr. Mike Williamson, who was also a great help and been involved with a number of acquisitions.
And just to clarify, those gentlemen that Chip mentioned, Mike Williamson, Zach Knoop, and Mike Brodock, are all senior safety consultants with Caterpillar Safety Services and come to us with vast backgrounds in industry and dealing with this kind of thing. Randy, did you want to contribute anything to that question, or should we move along?
Well, real briefly, my experience is really limited on the acquisition side, just to this one situation, and I was kind of struck by what Chip said, that you're with this, you're never done, and that's is that ever is that ever true? It is hard work, especially with an acquisition. But Chip did a great job of taking us through really this journey that we've been on here for the last couple of years, and you think you know a lot of things, but then you get into something like this and you realize you don't know as much as you thought you did, especially related to something like a culture change after an acquisition. So being able to go through kind of a tried and true process was just a godsend for us. And we're, as I said, we're not done, but it sure has been helpful for us.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Next question is, when acquiring a company overseas, some U.S. requirements do not apply. Example, MSHA. So the question is, does the mother company force the acquired company to meet the same requirements as the mother company in the U.S.?
Okay, could you repeat the first part of that question, Abby?
Sure. When acquiring a company overseas, some USA requirements do not apply. Example, MSHA. So the question is, does the mother company force the acquired company to meet the same requirements as the mother company in the U.S.?
Yes, great question. Yes, we do. By and large, the philosophy, I don't want to be so strong to say the policy, but the desire is, regardless of what country the company is in that we're acquiring, and the lack of regulatory control, Caterpillar still, requires that same level of control within their company, regardless whether that country regulates it or not. Now, there are some circumstances where that's just not practical or possible for various reasons. I can't give an exact example, but I'm going to stop short of saying we do that 100% of the time as a policy, but I know that the efforts are pointed that way. And I don't know, Randy, if you would have anything to add to that or not. I don't want to put put you out there, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, Chip. I just got back from spending 4 years in China and worked with a couple facilities over there, and it what you're describing is accurate. You know, it even to the point where you really have to do a lot of teaching, because if you're working with contractors doing work on your facility, for example, I mean, you can train your employees, yes, but then you have a contractor come on site to do some work, and you find that they're not following the practices. I mean, it got to a point where one contractor had to be fired because they just would not, do the tie-offs with workers on scaffolds and things like that you really had to step in and be kind of forceful on it with some of the Chinese folks. But yeah, we take the same practices, the same policies and procedures and apply those to our facilities worldwide, and it's all part of a values program that applies globally, not just in the U.S.
Okay, here's the last question, unless another one comes through here while you guys are answering this one. Who pays for this training, the acquired company or the acquiring company?
Well, in this case, you'll have to excuse me. I'm at a hotel, and they decided to set off the fire alarm while I'm talking with you, so now I'm standing outside, so I apologize. But it would be the acquiring company. So in the example of Caterpillar, now that they've acquired this company and we've deemed that training needs to be done, that's the onus of the ownership of the company. So that would be Caterpillar that would be providing that training. Now, in contrast, if the business just takes it on its own and says, "Boy, we really need this training for X, Y, and Z," and they do it on their own, then they would probably have to pay for it externally. But Caterpillar would pay for it in this case, if that answers the question.
I think that answers the question, Chip. Thanks. And that concludes all the questions that I received through WebEx. So unless there's anything else that you, Chip, or Randy would like to share, we can wrap it up.
Nope, I don't have anything to share. I appreciate everyone's time today.
Okay, well, I would just like to remind all of those who are still on the call that you will be receiving a follow-up email with some instructions and a link to access a recording of the webinar. All of our webinars are archived at safety.cat.com/webinars. There will be information there shortly as well about next month's webinar, which will take place on May 22nd, and I hope you'll all join us for that. Thanks again to our presenters, to Chip Steensma and to Randy McGuire, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.